Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales show. I'm your host, Mark Bangs. And as a way of introducing today's guest, I thought I would read out a LinkedIn post from today that she put out, actually. I think it gives a good first impression, shall we say. So here we go. She says, you can hire ghostwriters and personal branding experts. You can pay people to advise you on what to say. But what's one thing you can't outsource? It's your personal presence. The moment that you step on that stage in front of the camera or with a room full of expectant eyes looking up to you, you're on your own. You are on your own. But what will serve you well is two things. So number one, your deep knowledge of your work, your company, and your industry. And number two, the ability to express that knowledge with impact, charisma, and simplicity. And then she closes by saying, I have no doubt that you already have tons of one, but how do you rate yourself on number two? She'd love to know. So yeah, welcome Nausheen. I have Nausheen Chen as my guest today. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much, Mark, for that awesome, unconventional intro. I'm doing great, and I am super happy and excited to be on the Bang on Sales show.
Brilliant. Excited to have you.
Did I get that right? The title is right?
Bang on Sales show, yeah. I was more concerned about pronouncing your name, actually. So I think I was about okay. So I usually embarrass myself with that. But yeah, to kick things off, do you want to maybe tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I am originally from Pakistan, born and bred. And my first job was in the corporate world. I was at Procter & Gamble for 5 years doing PR and marketing, till I had what I fondly like to call my quarter life crisis at the ripe old age of 27, when I had this kind of rupture, I guess, of everything. I kind of broke away from the corporate world and also from a lot of things in general, a lot of institutions in general. And I traveled around for a while and meandered into improv and stand-up and theater and film, and went to grad school in New York for media studies. Then my husband and I came to China, and I started working as a solopreneur for the first time, as an entrepreneur for the very first time in my life. I had always worked for other people before. And that little solopreneurship grew into a small visual strategy startup, where we worked with Asian clients to create commercials for the US and for Europe. And I started branching out into PR work again last year, because that was part of my first job. And it also kind of falls into the whole gambit of helping Asian clients create an international presence. And then this year, I asked myself, what is it that I really want to be doing? And, I think it happens when you're kind of hitting the decades, right? Like 20, 30, 40. So yes, I had this whole, right? So I had this phase when I was turning 30, and now I'm going to be turning 40 in a year or so. So I definitely have that kind of thinking in my head, wondering, what do I actually really want to do in life? And is this it? And if it's not it, then it's really time to start. And I realized that the one common thing kind of running through my diverse experiences of PR, marketing, theater, film, and documentaries, and now PR again, was communications. So I told myself that this is something I really want to do. And what I really love doing is actually speaking, training, and coaching people to be better communicators. So that lands me to where I am now, where I'm working with leaders to enable them to have a better public presence, a more impactful, strategic, effective, confident, memorable public presence.
So succinctly put. So clearly, you know what you're doing. You know what you're talking about there. But that's great. And so when you say public presence, are we talking, I'm guessing it's a combination of public speaking, maybe some confidence, and actually working on the content, the messaging as well? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So yes, public speaking is at the core of it, but I like going several steps beyond that and really helping people craft their public persona. That is something that all of us have. All of us have actually different personas. We have a side of our personality that we expose to different parts of our community, depending on the context, depending on who we're addressing. And your public persona is, for a lot of people, especially for leaders, is the one that is the most obvious, but also the one that's the most vulnerable. And a lot of times it's not very well thought out, especially for new leaders. So at the point where they kind of transition from being managers to leaders, where they transition from being just someone working in the company to being an external face of the company or external face of their own business, that's the point where they have to start thinking strategically about who is it that they are presenting to the outside world. So of course, it kind of, the actual real life application of it is public speaking, presenting, pitching for startup founders, for example, pitching to VCs. It could also be something as simple as presenting to a group of people, presenting your idea, presenting an annual review. So anytime that you're talking to a group of people, whether it's a group of 5 or 500, you are creating a public presence. And that's what really excites me. That's what I really like working with people on. So it's a combination of working on, for sure, their confidence, the way they express themselves, their overall public speaking skills, and also the personality that they want to showcase to the world. And yes, we work on messaging. This depends on the context, because it's for the coaching work is very, very customized. So we work on messaging, but I would say my main goal is more on crafting their public persona.
Yeah, and I like something you said recently in a video you put out about, and I'm probably butchering it here, but you talk about bosses versus leaders and people that are coming up from middle management into higher management roles or positions. The focus changes, doesn't it? From being more about me and I'm trying to advance my career, and suddenly you're having to think about others, right? So does that play into what you do as well? That sort of self-perception, or that sort of intrinsic versus extrinsic focus?
Yes. So I think you're always aware on some level of what people think about you, and you are always trying to make the best impression, for sure, in terms of first impressions, in terms of creating a consistent, long-lasting impression. I think some people are better at this kind of naturally than others. Some people are more self-aware than others. And then when you make the switch to becoming a leader, not just being an employee, but actually taking care of people, then you have to really think about, if you haven't already, like really think about how others are perceiving you and figure out what is the gap. Is there a gap between how I want to be perceived and how I really am perceived? There are a lot of systems in place for that, the 360 feedback and other systems which actually let you get honest feedback from your team. And there is usually a disconnect. This is not surprising. And this is something, I don't know if you've experienced, like I've experienced it firsthand, where I used to think that, like I'm the bomb, like I'm just so good as a leader, as a boss, like I'm so inspiring. And then you actually sometimes sit down and have an honest heart-to-heart with your team, and you realize, actually, there's so many things that I need to be better in. And there are so many parts of my personality that are just not coming through. For me, especially because I've worked in the startup world now for about 7 years, the startup world is always stressful. You're always, working long days and trying to push your team and motivate your team. You're usually always working in a small team where people are doing a lot of work, like a lot of different jobs, wearing a lot of different hats. Motivation to my team. They were always stressed. It was always that, we just need to like keep going. We need to do more. You need to meet this client's deadline. You need to do this project. And there was something that one of my teammates said to me, which was a reality check. So I'm always very happy and kind of joking around with my friends. And at one point she told me, like, I cannot imagine you as a lighthearted or like as a person who makes jokes. Like, I just cannot imagine you as someone other than someone who's serious. And it was so far from my own image of myself, because I'm always like cracking jokes and like making fun of things with my friends. But I realized I was completely not bringing that part of my personality into my work.
Yes, I don't see you as overly serious. I don't see you as a non-serious person, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it probably depends on the situation. It brings out different aspects of your character, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
So, okay. So bearing in mind that our audience will predominantly be individual salespeople, sales leaders, business leaders generally, with everything that you've talked about, where are the common mistakes? I mean, where do you see people going wrong? And maybe if you could segue into some things that people could do to actually fix that, or, offer some alternatives.
Well, so in terms of public speaking or giving presentations, for example, one thing is that I've often seen that when people switch on their speaking mode, they kind of switch off their listening mode. And this often leads to just being a one-way conversation and people just kind of going on and on. And I'm sure this applies to sales pitches where, you just get pitch slapped and you're not really having a conversation. I'm not a sales specialist, but I have been on the receiving end of this so many times where you just
I'm just sitting here waiting to ask my next question. Like, I'm not even listening to you.
Right?
But that's it. Yeah, that's
yeah. And you just feel cheated at the end of that exchange. And this applies to really all forms of public communication. So even if you're in a room full of people, even if you're talking to an audience of like 100 or 200 at an event, it's always got to be a two-way dialogue. And the onus is on you as the speaker to figure out how to have that dialogue. In a small room of people, you can ask them a lot of different kinds of questions. People can raise their hands and give their opinions, and that creates a dialogue. In a big room where you're presenting, you have like 200 people, you can't have that kind of interaction, but you can still have interaction. You can ask yes or no questions, ask people to raise their hands, things that really indicate that this is a two-way street, that I am here talking, but I am talking to you, and you as my audience are the most important thing. It's not me, it's you. You are the people that enable me to be on this stage. So that is probably the number one mistake that we've seen.
You mentioned pitching to investors. This applies to, I guess, sales presentations to potential clients as well. Does the same principle apply there? Should we be actually planning this out to make it, although we're presenting, actually get feedback along the way in real time? Are there things that we could do maybe to keep people engaged, to keep that interactivity going?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just a huge fan of interaction. I think it can be built into any kind of pitch or speech, talk or presentation. And the more meaningful the engagement is, the more the audience will feel respected. So in a pitch presentation, for sure, you need to have very specific questions kind of woven into your pitch. You need to know at what point you want to be asking them what. And you also shouldn't overdo it. I have also seen people go the other extreme, where they ask a question like every 2 minutes or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
The audience will also get tired of engaging.
Yeah. Because you're just having a chat.
They want to know. Right? You're just having a chat, or maybe you're kind of not perceiving how people are going to be taking it as like there needs to be. So the dialogue in this case is that people need to be able to sit back and relax and observe you. And then you draw them in and they feel heard and respected. And then you let them go back and relax and just receive information. So the audience needs to go through these rhythms during the pitch or during the talk. And it's the same really, whether like whatever the format of the talk is. So it's really about being able to read the room, which I guess I would say would be the second thing that I see people struggling with. Being able to really read the room, get a feel for what the audience is thinking and feeling. Are they with you? Are they not with you? It takes an incredible amount of observation and being self-aware and being able to listen and observe and talk simultaneously.
Why do you think, well, it is challenging. Yeah. I mean, why do you think people struggle with this? Because I think it's where, for a lot of people, you know, we're nervous, right? Especially if we don't have a lot of experience, whether it's speaking to a potential client or going up on stage, speaking to an audience. So we end up, I say, like, we get stuck in our own heads. And so it's hard to be curious and empathetic when you're worried, like, what are they going to think about me? Or I need to remember to say this. Did you think that's the case? I mean, I would say always be curious, you know, it's kind of what you're talking about. Like, if you try and think about the other person, it's all about them, because then it kind of, you escape from this, and then you actually, does that sort of resonate with you?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. You said it in a really nice way where, yeah, it's about the audience and it's about getting out of your own head, because you're totally right. The more in your head you are, the more, not necessarily nervous, but the more introverted you're going to feel in a way, the more intensely self-aware you're going to feel. And it's like transitioning from a self-awareness that makes you shut yourself off to a self-awareness where you understand how others are looking at you and perceiving you, but you can also be outside of your own head and look at them and be with them. So it's that subtle shift that happens. They're both different forms of self-awareness. One is just more conducive to nervousness and more blindly kind of going down one path.
Put that so well there. The two different forms of self-awareness is brilliant. How do we get over that? Like, how do we move to the better side? I mean, is it just experience? Is it practice?
Practice plays a huge part. And it also depends on the quality of practice. So the way that I work with people is that, you know, we record what they're saying and we analyze it. And then we also look at what other people are doing and we analyze that. And the idea is never to imitate anyone, never to imitate another style, but to see what are the similarities that you can see in between, like, yourself presenting on stage and this person. Like, how did they handle this moment of stress? How did they handle the intro? How did they handle an interruption? How did they handle a question? How did they handle the rhythm of their speech? And taking those kinds of elements and building them into your own. So for sure, practice is at the heart of it, at the core of it. And it really, really pays off. I think the one thing that people really find a challenge is that public speaking it becomes like this rare thing, you know, like this unicorn type of activity that you might do like once a year or once in 2 years. And of course, then you're not going to get better if am I back?
Yeah. That's okay.
Sure. Sorry, this is always my internet.
So you said, of course, you're not going to get better if you're doing it once a year, I guess.
Yeah. So that's why it's really important to draw those parallels between public speaking at an event and presenting to your team or presenting ideas, which is way more common. But if you think of all of the opportunities where you're speaking to a group of people as basically opportunities to practice creating this public persona and practice ways to be calm and confident on stage, to really be in control of your nerves, a lot of new like public speakers that are very new to it, just really nerves, and people come up with their own coping mechanisms. Some people need to drink certain things before, or they need to, I don't know, be in a certain mindset. Some people meditate. And so it's about coming up with those coping mechanisms that really help you get over being this bundle of nerves and being just comfortable in your skin on that stage.
So I'll go full disclosure here, because this is something that I struggle with, because I'm new to public speaking, and I'm taking up any opportunity that I can. They're few and far between at the moment. I need to be a bit more proactive with it. But what I do find is, even say a business networking event, something when it's your turn to stand up and introduce yourself, I feel I have a physiological reaction leading up to it. It's bizarre, like emotionally I feel okay, but there's the physical symptoms of anxiety, like in my chest, and my heart rate just elevates just a little bit. And so, I think I'm probably not one to advise on. Maybe I need to speak to you. I don't know, but but I guess I'm saying, I can understand it, and you do need to practice, and it does get easier over time. But I guess from what you're saying, it's about being intentional, isn't it? You need to make a conscious decision that this is something I want to get better at, and I'm going to dedicate some time and energy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real fear. It's I believe it's called glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. So it's a real thing, and it's been studied, and there are like coping mechanisms that work for people. Every mechanism doesn't work for everyone, so it's hard giving like kind of advice that would apply to everyone, but for sure, like breathing exercises, getting into your zone, taking like a few minutes for yourself before the event where you're not on your phone and you're just kind of in the moment, practicing mindfulness. All of those things can be effectively used to get over that feeling of like your heart beating fast and you not being able to kind of feel like this is you. And for sure. I mean, I definitely had that a lot. In the beginning, my heart would beat really fast, and I would sometimes my voice would waver. I wouldn't know if I would remember everything that I was going to say. Mm-hmm. And then it does go away with time. So for sure, practice and figuring out the right coping mechanisms that can help you get over it. Because it's not just practicing without, like you said, being intentional about it and without coming up with specific coping strategies. It could work, but it would take much longer, I feel.
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. Very good advice. So you kind of alluded to this at the start, but who is your ideal customer profile? Like who can you help the most, would you say?
I love working with new leaders. I love working with people that have never really spoken in public before, or maybe they've had one or two chances to speak in public, but they're not super happy with their experience. And I love working with people that are in general quite confident and even extroverted in real life, like in one-to-one conversations. And it's a very interesting profile that I've seen is actually way more common than introverts. Normally you'd think that it's the introverts or the shy ones that are kind of not very comfortable speaking in public. But actually, there's a huge portion of like a significant number of people that are very, very sociable and friendly, and they love one-to-one interactions, but they hate public speaking. So to me, that means that
you're describing me right now. This is like
right.
But yeah,
I was always surprised because I am like the third group, which is I think a little bit more like an outlier. I'm like that weirdo that like I'm extroverted and sociable, and I love public speaking. And for me, the one-to-one networking was something I had to get used to.
All right.
So I'm like the opposite. And I never understood this about myself, because like you put me in front of 100 people and I am super comfortable. And you put me in front of a stranger, especially at a networking event, more than anything else, I'm just going to be like, okay, Nausheen, gotta calm down. Gotta remember that you're an interesting, intelligent person and you have something to offer.
Yeah.
but I will never doubt that about myself on stage. It's weird. So yes, so the group of people that you also fall into, it's a very interesting and exciting group. And just the fact that you're so confident and so at ease with yourself in a one-to-one setting means that you really have those skills. You already know what it is to connect with people, to make that connection. Now is just about taking those skills from the one-to-one world to a one-to-many world and figuring out how that translates. How can you think of yourself talking to 100 or 200 or 1,000 people in the same way? And how would you put yourself in the same mindset that you're in when you're talking to, like, one-to-one with someone?
You're asking me literally, are you? That's something for me to think about, I guess. Yeah, no, that's amazing.
You can answer it if you're.
No, but it's interesting that you've been able to really highlight that or identify that sweet spot there, that people like that, because I hadn't considered that. So yeah, no, really interesting.
I think I'm frozen again. Oh, okay, I'm back.
It's okay. I can cut this, no problem. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Nausheen. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. Where can people find out a bit more about you? Where can they connect with you?
I'm really active on LinkedIn these days. That's how we connected. LinkedIn would be the best place. LinkedIn would be the best place. I believe I'm on LinkedIn as Nausheen I, Chen. So if you search for Nausheen I, Chen, you should be able to find me. I think I'm the only one because it's such a weird name. But yeah, so that's really the best place to really connect with me. I am working on getting my website up soon, but it is a work in progress at the moment.
Yeah, sounds familiar. And weird name. I mean, come on, like, remember who you're talking to right now.
No, your last name totally works for you. It's such an awesome last name.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much, Nausheen. Really good having you on. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks. Cheers. It's great talking to you.
Bye-bye.